Now joining me now on my panel is the newly promoted Simon Birmingham, who's the Parliamentary Secretary to the Environment at the moment, but will soon move to Assistant Minister to Education. He joins me from Adelaide, and here with me in Sydney is Shadow Minister Michelle Rowland. Thank you both for joining me this morning. But Simon Birmingham, first to you, congratulations, and what do you hope to bring to the new role?
Well, thanks very much, Laura, and good morning. I'm very excited about the role. It will have a particular focus in terms of my responsibilities on training, apprenticeships and vocational education. So really that pointy end of helping people get into work, helping them be skilled for the jobs of the future. And I look very much forward to working with Christopher Pyne, of course, in the education portfolio, but importantly also Scott Morrison as part of the broader reshuffle, with a real focus on how we assist people and drive people out of welfare into jobs, giving them the dignity of employment, the opportunity to achieve more for their family, and of course importantly the chance overall to contribute to the growth of Australian businesses and the Australian economy, which is so central to the objectives of our government.
The government's university reform, Simon Birmingham, is something that has been stalled in the Senate, with the crossbench giving no indication that this is something that it will pass even in the new year. So bringing to this new role, do you bring more concessions perhaps to try and get these reforms through?
Look, I'll sit down and talk to Christopher Pyne about the details of the reforms and exactly where discussions are with all of the crossbenchers. But obviously, as a senator, I look forward to helping him on that higher education reform agenda. I'll be taking the chance over the break to meet with vice-chancellors as well as those in the training sector to make sure I'm well informed on their views about higher education reform, and that I can assist wherever possible in terms of trying to get those crossbenchers across, because it is so absolutely critical that our universities are well positioned to compete on what is now a global field. It's not a case of universities in Australia just providing services for Australian students. It's a great big export market to the rest of the world, but also they are at threat from other universities around the rest of the world, and we need to enable them to compete and have the freedom to do so.
Michelle Rowland, how do you look at this new reshuffle? Do the new faces on the front bench change anything for Labor in terms of strategy, in terms of going into 2015?
Sure. Well, firstly, may I also congratulate Senator Birmingham on his elevation. It must be a tremendous honour to serve as a Minister of the Crown, and I wish you well, Simon.
Thank you, Michelle.
But as Simon said, there are huge challenges in this area, and the announcement that the Prime Minister made saying that this will be a ministry that's focused on jobs and focused on families. The reality is, Laura, if this was a government focused on jobs and families, it would not have delivered the budget that it did in May. And that focus on jobs and families is precisely what Bill Shorten made his centrepiece of in his budget reply, when the community very quickly cottoned onto the fact that this was an inequitable budget. I find it also interesting there's a lot of talk about these new ministers and new faces being able to sell the message better. The problem isn't the message, the problem is the product. The product is a dud in all these areas. Higher education reform, as you mentioned, the GP tax still there in some form and being rejected even by the AMA. These policies are still there. So I think although we have this change of faces, the reality is that the product is still a dud.
Well, Simon Birmingham, what do you have to say to that? And also, with these reshuffles, there are always winners and losers, sideways shuffles as well. Do you think David Johnston, being a senator from Adelaide, really had to go after the comments he made about the ASC?
Laura, I'll let other people be commentators in regards to who was in and who was out and so on. Of course,
but you can see that those comments didn't all go down well in South Australia, did they?
Well, politics and reshuffles are a zero-sum game. People have, to create room for new faces to go in, other people have to go out. That's just the nature of a reshuffle, and they're the difficult decisions that leaders have to make. And in the Liberal Party and the coalition, that falls squarely on the shoulders of the Prime Minister. He's made his call there. David Johnston is a good friend. He's a fine man. He knows his defence material inside out. He has done a great job in terms of working through some of the challenges on the personnel side around the sex scandals that the Defence Forces faced. He had them well positioned for the movements into the Middle East that had to occur. occur in response to the threat from ISIL. So David has done a great job. He's had his challenges, that's been widely acknowledged, but I really do wish David all the best for the future. In terms of the broader point, look, as a government, of course, you're always seeking to get the best policies you can for the future. And that's exactly what we've been doing since we were elected, and we'll continue to refine them and reshape them, in part where we think they can be improved and in part where we have to make concessions with the Senate to be able to get things implemented. And that's just the nature of getting on with the business at hand. But our focus and our absolute focus will remain on growing the economy, growing jobs, supporting families and fixing, of course, the budget to get the deficit under control.
And what do we read into Scott Morrison's appointment? He has been one of the best performing ministers of the last 12 months, effectively stopping the boats. Now he's been put into the economic team. So what do we read into this? That Joe Hockey perhaps needs more help selling the budget, needs to bolster that message with someone like Scott Morrison?
Well, look, I think you can say it's a very strong team for sure. You've got Kevin Andrews, one of the most experienced ministers going into the defence portfolio, a very steady pair of hands there, and Scott Morrison, who has been so effective in getting the issue of illegal arrivals fixed and addressed, in getting his reforms through the Senate, is now in that crucial social services portfolio with responsibility for getting people off of welfare and into jobs, with responsibility for shaping and crafting a families package that deals with the childcare challenges Australia faces. These are critical issues, and they are issues that we are determined to get right as a government, and putting Scott, one of our best performers, right out there in that space is a brilliant move, and I've got absolutely no doubt that he will do an outstanding job in helping families, pensioners, people of Australia have every opportunity to get into the workforce and contribute to our economy and society.
And Michelle Rowland, you and I, no doubt, would be welcoming the appointment of, or the elevation of 3 women. We see the elevation of Susan Lee into the health portfolio, but also Kelly O'Dwyer into the outer ministry, the parliamentary secretary, and also Karen Andrews in that space. You'd welcome that?
Oh, look, I welcome that, and I congratulate those 3 women on their elevation, and they are indeed well deserved. I don't think, however, Laura, we should be breaking out the party poppers yet, because we've increased the representation in the cabinet from 1 to 2 women. I think the reality is that women still remain chronically underrepresented in this Abbott ministry, and particularly in the cabinet. I congratulate, as I said, all women who've been elevated. I think that Karen Andrews will bring particular expertise to her role with a background in science. It's very pleasing to see, after 18 months or so, that science has now been given a title within the ministry, and more than a title. I'm sure she will be able to bring some of that experience there. But look, she has enormous challenges as well. The cuts, for example, to the CSIRO, which has decimated that area, the need to focus on science, technology and maths as part of the curriculum, also as part of an innovation agenda. They will be tremendous challenges for her. I wish her well in that role. Unfortunately, I don't think we've seen that to date. I mean, we had an industry statement that excluded ICT as one of the focus industries, one of the focus sectors in this country. Hopefully that will be remedied.
And Simon Birmingham, just your quick reaction on the number of women in cabinet. Still a fairly large underrepresentation, wouldn't you say?
You've got women in this government playing very important roles. Julie Bishop in Foreign Affairs, the first ever female Foreign Minister in Australia. Susan Lee now taking on the health portfolio, one of the biggest long-term budgetary challenges Australia faces, and a huge task for Susan in that space. Kelly O'Dwyer coming off the backbench into a Treasury role. Karen Andrews, as you just heard, into a role in science. We've already got, of course, extremely capable women like Michaelia Cash and Maurice Payne and Conchetta Fierravanti Wells playing roles across immigration and human services and social services. So really right across the government there are women playing key roles, and I'm sure that number will only increase as time goes on. Simon
Birmingham, Michelle Rowland, stay with us. A quick break here on AIM Agenda.
So, do we or don't we? 5 years ago, we would have jumped on this.
Buongiorno.
It's a great business you have here. What's your secret?
La nave nel porto è al sicuro, ma non è per questo che è stata costruita.
He said a ship in the harbour is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. Australian business. See more, not less. NAB.
Introducing the first ever BMW 2 Series Active Tourer. Ready for whatever, whenever, wherever. With a true sense of space, versatility and innovative design, trademark BMW luxury, and all the performance of the ultimate driving machine. Discover where to next at your preferred BMW dealer.
Still, better garden power tools. Hard to wrap, easy to give. Still grass trimmers. Assembled, fueled, ready to go. Buy better at 450 Still stores across Australia.
To be a trader, you need that spark inside. The courage, vision, and determination. The eye to see opportunity, and the wit to seize the right one. IG.
No matter what you're up to this summer, don't miss our delicious chicken strips smothered in cheeky chipotle sauce or low-fat honey mustard ham at Subway with beetroot. Or not. Handmade for your summer.
Wherever you're headed this snow season, make sure your first destination is snowbiz.com.au. It's where you'll find the biggest and best range of ski and board gear, clothing and accessories. Shop online anytime and we'll deliver it all to your door anywhere in Australia. For big brands at the best prices, snowbiz.com.au is your ultimate snow destination. Snowbiz, snow the way you like it.
Yeah, Snowbiz! Nailing fences, painting wagons, blowing leaves away. Pick up DIY for the easy way.
With one battery powering over 40 gifts, all your Christmas lists are ticked. Fill their stocking with a Ryobi One Plus starter drill kit for $199. Ryobi One Plus, one battery powers over 40 gifts. Available at Bunnings Warehouse.
Welcome back to AM Agenda. Just breaking news in the last couple of minutes. As you can see on your screen, official announcement of a merger between the Macquarie Radio Network and Fairfax Media Limited. We'll have all the details at 9 o'clock. But of course, the Prime Minister, as he was out selling his cabinet ministerial reshuffle today, it was also noted that he is the Minister for Women as well as being the Prime Minister. He was asked on the Today Show what the biggest achievements and what he thought the biggest achievements were in that portfolio this year. This is what he had to say.
As many of us know, women are particularly focused on the household budget, and the repeal of the carbon tax means a $550 a year benefit for the average family. Now we've got our fair income paid parental leave scheme, which will be coming into the Parliament in the new year. We've got improvements to childcare, and obviously I'm very pleased that I was able to promote 3 women in my own ministry yesterday.
Rowland, how has the Prime Minister gone in this portfolio as being Minister for Women, do you think?
I find the Prime Minister's response this morning extremely curious. I mean, he names 3 items. The first he names is getting rid of the price on carbon, saying that this is something that's family friendly to budgets. Well, their budget that they handed down in May, again, hit families the hardest. And I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to realise that exactly what he said in terms of hitting household budgets was exactly what his budget did. The second issue on paid parental leave, well, it hasn't even been legislated yet. This was a Prime Minister whose transition to and from the PPL started off with, over my dead body, here's my proposal, I've watered it down, I'm a convert, so I'm the biggest zealot for it, and he hasn't even legislated on it yet. And, I just find this extremely curious that the Prime Minister nominates these things. And childcare, well, childcare, they've announced a title for a family package, and it's just a thought bubble without any substance yet. I haven't heard anything about making sure that we pursue pay equity. I haven't heard anything about making sure that we have women fully participating in our education institutions, in higher roles, in the private sector. None of that, no vision whatsoever.
Simon Birmingham, was the Prime Minister perhaps caught off guard this morning with that question?
Oh, the Prime Minister gets asked questions on all manner of topics all of the time, and he's as well prepared as he ever can be for all of them, and it sounded to me like he made a great case for the fact that a coalition government rightly prides itself on reducing costs for households and for families. And Michelle Rowland might, and the Labor Party might, like to talk about whether or not there's ever-increasing sums of government money going into the hands of people. We think it's far more important to reduce the costs wherever you can. And getting rid of the carbon tax was all about reducing those household costs, those electricity costs, those grocery bills, driving down the cost pressures for families so they are in charge of their own destiny. And that's what's so important. Now, on a more broader spectrum in terms of women's participation in the workforce, Tony Abbott has been a relentless advocate in relation to paid parental leave and making sure that there is every opportunity for women to increase their participation in the workforce. It is one of the issues he has championed, and championed with some criticism even from those like Michelle in the Labor Party and on the left of politics. So he has been at the forefront of that, and of course is now put at the forefront of this cabinet reshuffle the need to develop new packages and new policies to ensure that childcare supplements that paid parental leave scheme, and they complement each other brilliantly to make sure we boost that workplace productivity and participation by women at every opportunity.
Criticism from within the party, you'd have to say as well. But Michelle Rowland, I just wanted to ask you, looking at Kelly O'Dwyer's elevation into Parliamentary Secretary for the Treasurer, her promotion well deserved, but she's an expectant mother. She's pregnant, she's due to give birth next year. You also gave birth whilst in Parliament, not in Parliament, but
thankfully.
What's your view on how difficult it is for women in politics to also, you know, balance the two? And is Parliament conducive to motherhood?
I think the second question is sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's seriously not. But it all comes down, I think, to, if I had to sum it up in one word, it's logistics. And it's the same, I think, for any working mother, especially if it's a working mother who has also a partner who's working as well. And it's the story that I think our constituents go through every day. It's the getting the timing right, using your time appropriately, making sure that you're getting enough time to give to your baby. I mean, it's especially difficult when you're a first-time mother, I think, going into this and not really knowing what to expect. But yeah, I actually drew a lot on the women that I worked with in the private sector. I had a before life before coming into Parliament. I drew on those experiences. I was also given a lot of encouragement from people like Tanya Plibersek, Nicola Roxon and Catherine King, and I found that to be very useful. And I think, you know, when I say sometimes it's not conducive, things like the hours are not conducive, especially for me. I was in a hung Parliament, you know, still breastfeeding. I mean, it was, you know, a very difficult time. Hopefully Kelly won't have some of those issues that I had to deal with there. But it is a matter of logistics, and it is a matter of making sure that you have enough time for yourself, your child, and for your job. And there's no reason why Kelly won't be able to do that, and I wish her every success.
We wish her luck. But I just want to finish on one last topic, the renewable energy target. Now, Simon Birmingham, you're still Parliamentary Secretary to the Environment at the moment. We've seen Minister McFarlane this morning in the Australian newspaper warn that if a deal is not done on the renewable energy target soon, this will push up electricity prices. Is it now time for the coalition to get back to the negotiating table with Labor and start, I guess, looking at what seems to be immovable from the government's perspective, and that is on the real 20% target?
So let's have a look at the facts underlying what Ian Macfarlane said there. He's relying on evidence from the Australian energy market operator, whose estimates are that we will see some 4,000 gigawatt hours of extra wind capacity come into the market before 2020, which is only around half to two-thirds of what the RET mandates. And so if the RET target is not met, it goes into default. And if it goes into default, there are significantly higher costs and penalty costs that will flow through to the electricity bills of Australian households and Australian businesses. So this is a real warning to Bill Shorten and Mark Butler in the Labor Party. Come back to the negotiating table and work through a sensible outcome on the RET. We've outlined 4 key principles around the RET. Our intentions to try to move towards a real 20%. We want 20% renewable energy. That's what we've always been committed to. That's what we want to move towards, to ensure that we provide the right exemptions and support for trade-exposed industries,
just to Michelle,
that we keep protections there for solar PV and for the industry in general.
Michelle Rowland, should Labor go back to the negotiating table?
Well, it's quite clear that Bill Shorten and Mark Butler, actually some weeks ago now, said that they were prepared to enter into renegotiations on this matter. The reality is, however, that Ian Macfarlane started out with quite an unrealistic proposal to decimate the RET, and we can't support that.
Michelle Rowland, Simon Birmingham, thanks so much for joining me on AM Agenda.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you both.
And your viewers.
A quick break here on AM Agenda. We'll be back with more.